And guess what? I went to a monarchy called Bophuthatswana. People think it was a homeland. It was not a homeland. It was a monarchy because it was led by a monarch. Kgosi, His Majesty Kgosi Manyane Mangophe. For 17 years, he created a development that is unparalleled to date. To date, Nziki. No one, whether it's Muammar Gaddafi, whether it is Kwame Nkrumah, no one can match what this man did in 17 years. With pieces of land, with no oil, with no gold, with no diamond. What he achieved, the first thing that he did was to work on the identity of his people. You know what was the ID document called in Bophuthatswana? Ikitsi. Know yourself first. That's what it was called. So he prepared a Motswana who was 17 years ahead of us in 1994. The things they were doing, you know, he took the whole of what Israel is and basically did a replica in Bophuthatswana. I mean, Nsiki, do you know that that airport in Mahikeng has the second longest runway in the whole continent, the sixth longest in the world, right? The only airport in Africa that has an ALS. You know what an ALS is? Automatic landing system. So when the plane comes into its airspace, the equipment lands the plane, not the pilot. Its navigational infrastructure conflates in the whole of Southern Africa, right? And you call that a Bantustan leader? You call that a dictator? He defied apartheid. That stadium in Mahikeng has the second biggest seating capacity after FNB Stadium, 80,000, right? But guess what? By design, it is the only floating stadium in Africa. You know what that means? It's hanging on springs. Its foundation is 100 meters deep. So if there is an earthquake happening on this continent, the safest place to be is Mabatu Stadium.
What?
Bob Recording Studios, the best ever built recording studios in the world. Acoustically, there's no studio that compares to BRS. You know why? It's a floating studio. The foundation is 50 meters deep. So if there's a recording, there is going to be a seamless recording. There won't be any interruption. If you look at the infrastructure, this is 1991, right? It was 20 years ahead of its time. Both digital and analog at the same time, Nziki, right? So there's no sound engineer who gets there and says, listen, I'm only doing analog. No, you can interface between digital. This is 1991. And you know, there was a migration from analog to digital. You know what? They are now migrating back to analog because digital is flat, analog is broad. There's a chilling plant in that studio, Nziki. Water is circulated on a 24-hour basis. It is then pumped onto the top of the studio. There's a massive air-conditioned plant, which is green. This is 1991, right? Guess what happens? You know that when you start recording, your humidity level increases. This water is then oxygenated, and it is chilled to 2 degrees. And it is then poured into the studio so that it mitigates the humidity levels. This is 1991. The desks there, we're talking about 184 channels.
How come we don't hear about this leader?
Well, because the ANC was given an instruction to dismantle this economic development model called Bophuthatswana. And they did that from 1994 to date. 30 years later, everything that was there in Nziki that this monarch had built, right? They've destroyed. They've collapsed it. The largest irrigation scheme in the entire continent was in Taung. Do you know why? Because every river in the then Bophuthatswana and Western Transvaal, guess what? The catchment was Taung before the water goes to the sea. So he built the largest dam there to catch this water and built the biggest irrigation scheme. Guess what? A Bantustan was exporting barley to the rest of the world. That is in Taung. In Lubatla, in Motswedi, guess what? He was exporting vegetables and fruits to the rest of the world. And here's the deal. Every homeland got their 100% grants from the apartheid government in Pretoria. Guess how much Bophuthatswana got? Only 20%. they generated their own 80%. The first monarchy to have a low-cost carrier, Bob Air. You know what was the cost from Mafeking to Johannesburg? Return ticket, 550 rands.
Why did the black people destroy Bophuthatswana?
No, it is not the Africans who destroy it.
What happened?
It is the owners of the means of production, distribution, and exchange. The 8 families that owns 85% of this economy. If you allowed Bob to extend, you are basically inculcating, you are incubating a new Africa who can lead South Africa better than the Afrikaners, better than the English. Listen, Mahikeng is home to the only community university in Africa. The people of Bob built a university, right? They donated money, cows, right? If you look at the faculties there, I mean, the best nanotechnologist, and may his soul rest in peace, from my University of Bophuthatswana.
You know why I'm shocked in that Ndabeni? It's because when we were young, there was a narrative sold that Mangope is this power-hungry, doesn't want to join the South African corporation, and they just made him seem like, oh my God, like what they did to Mugabe, basically. So can you give us a bit of the history and whatever so that we can correct that narrative?
Here's a deal. His father is a founding member of the ANC. Here's a deal. He was a member of the ANC Youth League. Here's a deal. He was taught maths and science by O.R. Tambo at St. Peter's in Rosentonville. Here's a deal. His fellows was Robert Mugabe, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, Robert Smangaliso Sobukwe, Govan Mbeki, you name it. But he was a monarch. He was a Khosi, right? And look at the vision. You see, everything that has to do with the Renaissance of Africa is 2 things: vision and leadership and execution, nothing else. So he did that. He created an economy. Yes, people are saying it was artificial, but guess what? 90% employment in Bophuthatswana, 90%. And guess the other dichotomy. It is the only place where white people went there to look for work. They didn't go to the Transkei to look for work. They were deployed by Pretoria to look after their money. But in Bob, pilots came to work for Bob Air. Mabato Television, radio television, you name it. The banks, they had banks in Tsiki. They had banks. They had a marketing board that would buy all the proceeds from the farmers every year, right? They had a development corporation. When they were sort of like, de-established in 1994, guess what was SEBO? SEBO was the PIC. The PIC in actual fact is modeled on SEBO. Guess what was the balance sheet of the PIC? At the time, the so-called New South Africa happened. They had 45 billion rands balance sheet.
Guys.
This is 1994. You need to ask the so-called liberation movement, because I don't see the equity at all. What exactly did they create? Well, what exactly did they liberate us from? Because we're still not liberated economically. But what value did they create in 30 years? Juxtaposed to the 17 years that Kgosi Mangope had. The best bus building infrastructure asset Jura built. Go and look at it in Pretoria, what it looks like today. The industrial parks, I'm talking about 6 industrial parks. Go and look at the state of those industrial parks. Ntsiki, I'm also talking about conservation estate. This man was a conservationist. He built Pilansbeck. He built Madikwe. He built all those 16 game. Go and see. Ntsiki, there's no game. The fences are gone. Right? He was generating, he did 2 things. He created institutions. Because remember, that's the only way you can grow an economy. You need institutions, right? And he also created assets, commercial assets. That's why he was making money. And that is why he could take that money and invest. And I mean, let's look at the judiciary. Where does Mogoeng comes from? University of Bophuthatswana. Sisi Kampepe, Judge Nkabinde. You name them, right? I mean, the law faculty at the University of Bophuthatswana was run by the best, Professor Cayman Nathan. right? The best. And guess where she's buried? She's buried in Mutsweri, and she's Jewish, by the way. The only Jewish woman buried in a village in Africa, and is being celebrated. So when people say Bophuthatswana was a homeland, Bophuthatswana was a curse, was a disaster, I don't know where they're coming from. Because I was deployed with John Lamula, the current CEO of SAA, with the late Sheena Duncan, and I worked in Bophuthatswana. And funny enough, all the reports I wrote back to headquarters. Yes, there's human rights challenges in Bophuthatswana, but the economic model we need to study and duplicate in the new South Africa. Those were my footnotes. And you know who had problems with them all the time? Dr. Frank Chikani says, I have a problem with these footnotes. So I know you said, where do I come from? I come from Beggersdal. I went to Bob. I got arrested. I got deported.
Arrested for?
You remember I was a deputy chairperson of the civic movement in Beggersdal, and we organized the biggest bus boycott in the West Rand. Till today, you can't see buses in the whole of the West Rand. We were the leadership. We went to prison, and when I came out of prison in 1988, Joe Sremani got me a job at the SACC, very interestingly. And I was working in Bob. That's how I came to know about Bob, and I was fascinated with what they were doing. And let me be metaphoric again. For the first time, I saw Africans who were sober during the day, who were behind major assets. I mean, the best cargo pilots in South Africa, 100% of them were trained in Bophuthatswana. The best CPLs, commercial pilots at SAA, Bophuthatswana. So that man did so much. We're unveiling his tombstone, by the way, this Saturday. And Mogoeng gave the inaugural lecture. I just feel that, we could have done better, because this man represents what you call an embodiment of excellence in leadership in Africa. Yeah, there's a model there, and I don't understand why we dismantle the model. Because the first thing that Pupo Molefe and his cabinet did was to dispose of those assets.
What?
Yes. Can I tell you, he claims he's going to sue me, but I want to repeat it on your podcast again.
Oh, and then I must also get sued.
No, you're not going to get sued. I asked him a simple question. Sun City, the land belongs to the Lidach people and the Bakatla people, right? 1,400 hectares. Guess what? 1994, instead of restituting the land to the rightful owners, they transfer the land to national government, right? And then they say they are the lessor and Sun City is the lessee, right? The people that own Ntsiki 45 years later. Sun City is turning 45 this year. Pilanesberg is turning 45. 45 years later, the owners of the land have no equity, zero equity, have no management role, zero management. Sun City is run by people from outside of the Northwest. Procurement, zero. Sun City buys 1 million eggs. Ntsiki, none of those eggs are bought in the Northwest. Yet there are farmers around Sun City, right? So I asked him a question. Why did you transfer the land to national? 2, where's the lease agreement between Sun City, Sun International, and the national government? Because there isn't. This is an arrangement to frustrate these communities. But 2, very important, why did you transfer the physical assets that were built by the Bob government? And you know what are those physical assets? The Palace of the Lost City, the Cascades, the main hotel, and the cabanas. They were transferred in Ntsiki. They were not sold because they cannot produce a sale and purchase agreement 45 years later. So the balance sheet of Sun International, when they say they own Sun City, somebody needs to ask the question, who paid NWDC for the cost, the investment cost of building that which you see there?
So then where does Saul Kerzner fit in?
He just brought the brand. He's a brand strategist. He just brought the brand. Sun International, Sun City. That's it. Everything was done by the Northwest Development Corporation, which today is bankrupt. cannot pay its staff members. And yet, in 1994, it was sitting, I'm sure, with about close to about 500 million rands in its bank account. There's a company where I became CEO. You remember I became CEO, Northwest Parks and Tourism Board in 2003. Again, in the conservation space, Kgosi Mangophe had created companies. And do you know why he created companies? So that he must make tourism affordable for his people. You know, you could go to Bakatla Gate and sleep in a 5-sleeper chalet for 200 rands, all 7 of you. Today, it's not, right? And that's why people don't travel, you know? And I was saying that to the minister. Deal with the issue of access and affordability and
Economic
transformation.
exclusion.
Exactly. We are not physically oppressed today, but the economics is being used to exclude us. We can't go to places because we don't have the money, you know? So look at Pilanesberg. We had a company called Dirapeng. Ziki, this is criminal. Dirapeng, when I left, had a balance sheet of $500 million. Today has a 0 balance sheet. Because some premier called Supra Maumapelo decided to sell it for R1 to a company called Northwest Development Corporation. R1. This Dirapeng has 50% shares in a company called Pilanesberg Resorts. Guess who is the other partner? His name is Bart Dorenston. And guess what? Bart is the guy who owns the Michelangelo. Bart is the guy who owns the Da Vinci. Bart is the guy who owns the Leonardo, the latest, tallest building. Where did he get the money from? From the Pilanesberg. Do you know why? He's never declared dividends since 1991. That's why they got rid of me. Because every time they see me, there's institutional memory. 2, I'm very knowledgeable about these issues. That's why I'm the most hated guy in the Northwest. But I'm still standing. You know, I'm still standing. Because every time I see them and I said, Bart, where are the dividends? You know? It's criminal what the ANC has done in the Northwest. You know? But they have no conscience. And you know, when I say the ANC, I know I'm talking about an organization. The individuals it has deployed in the Northwest are evil people, are criminals. What they did to me personally, but what they've done to the people of the Northwest. You know, there's no water in the towns in the Northwest. There's no water. Go and see Mafikeng. It's full of potholes today. When in 1988, when I was on a charter bus and I traveled into Mafikeng, I marveled what I saw. I saw Africans in charge, driving the best cars. Megacity was the first ever built shopping mall in Africa, for your information. Leopard Park was the first ever built golf estate in Africa. Go and look at them today.
What?
Yes. That is why my company is in the business of packaging this knowledge, harvesting it, quality assuring it. We're now looking at developing a digital bank, and we're also looking at the option of creating our own cryptocurrency. But we're creating iconic African brands because we now have this knowledge, right? And then lastly, we're also using this knowledge to now implement what we call social and economic interventions in those townships and villages. I gave you Sunset, I gave you Pilanesberg. Let me give you Tlhabane ya Makgowa. Do you know why they call it Tlhabane ya Makgowa? The only township that had an urban development plan when it was built in 1945. It had